Pirates didn't know the alien they captured was engaged to a human veteran. The hum of the Ravager corvette's engines felt like a taunt against Asajj's sensitive skin, a vibration that rattled her intricate, crimson-veined head crests. She sat pinned against the cold bulkhead of the holding cell, her hands bound in neural shackles that pulsed with a sickening yellow light. Her captors, a motley crew of insectoid Krell and hulking Gorn, paced outside the energy bars, their mandibles clicking in a language of greed. They saw her as a high-value asset, a biological curiosity with skin like burnished marble and eyes that held the depth of an ancient nebula. They did not see the ring on her finger, hidden beneath a holographic shroud, nor did they understand the terrifying nature of the man who had placed it there. "You think your status protects you," the pirate captain spat, his breath smelling of fermented engine coolant. "My status is a burden," Asajj replied, her voice steady despite the thrumming fear in her chest. "My husband, however, is a promise," she added. The pirates laughed, a sound like dry husks grinding together, unaware that several light years away, a silent hunter had already locked onto their signature. In the dark void, a ship that shouldn't exist, a modified stealth interceptor named the Vengeance, slipped through the sensor nets of the Syndicate. Inside, Asher adjusted his combat rig, the heavy ceramic plates clicking into place over his scarred chest. He wasn't the decorated hero the Federation propaganda reels showed. He was a man who had spent 20 years learning how to break things that were meant to stay whole. His eyes, a sharp, predatory gray, focused on the schematic of the pirate vessel, calculating the exact pressure points of their hull. He didn't need a fleet, because humans didn't fight for glory. They fought for what belonged to them. The breach was not a roar, but a whisper. Asher used a localized gravity well to pin the corvette's escort ships against their own momentum, causing them to collide in a silent, spectacular display of kinetic failure. He docked his craft against the cargo bay with a magnetism that barely registered on the pirate's internal sensors. When the airlock hissed open, he didn't come in screaming. He moved like smoke, a silhouette of black matte armor and suppressed weaponry. The first pirate he encountered, a four-armed lookout, didn't even have time to raise a rifle before Asher's blade found the soft gap in its thorax. "Status," Asher whispered into his internal comms, his voice a low growl of focused intent. The ship's AI flickered a map onto his HUD, highlighting the life signs in the brig. "Target confirmed," the AI responded. Asajj felt the change in the ship's atmosphere before she heard it. The subtle shift in the vibration of the floor, the way the guards suddenly stopped their taunting and looked toward the corridor with a flicker of unease. A muffled thump echoed through the deck plating, followed by a hiss of escaping gas. Then, the lights flickered and died, plunged into the crimson emergency glow of a failing reactor. The pirates began to shout, their weapons energizing with a high-pitched whine that set Asajj's nerves on fire. "Stay down," a voice echoed through the ventilation, a voice she knew in the deepest marrow of her bones. She pressed her back against the wall, a small, hopeful smile breaking through her exhaustion. "Asher," she whispered the name a prayer. The door to the brig didn't open. It disintegrated. A shaped thermite charge turned the heavy durasteel into a molten curtain, and through the sparks stepped a demon of Terran engineering. Asher moved with a fluidity that mocked the pirate's frantic reactions, his sidearm barking in rhythmic, controlled bursts. Every shot found a lethal junction, a testament to a lifetime of specialized violence. He reached the cell, his armored hand ripping the control panel from the wall and shorting the energy field. "Did they touch you?" Asher asked, his voice thick with a protective rage that made the air feel heavy. "Only to bind me," Asajj said, stepping into his reach. He pulled her against his chest, the hard edges of his armor a comforting contrast to the vulnerability she had felt. His hand, gloved in tactical weave, cupped her face, his thumb tracing the sharp line of her jaw. "I told you I'd find you," Asher murmured, his helmet retracting to reveal the intensity of his gaze. "I never doubted," she replied, her breath hitching as he leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The moment of intimacy was shattered by a resurgence of pirate reinforcements. Asher didn't flinch. He spun Asajj behind him, his rifle coming up in a single, practiced motion. Close your eyes, he commanded. What followed was a masterclass in human tactical dominance. Asher didn't just shoot, he manipulated the environment. He used the ship's own fire suppression systems to blind the enemies, then utilized his mag boots to run along the ceiling, raining fire from an angle the pirates' biology couldn't easily track. He was a whirlwind of efficiency, turning the cramped corridor into a kill zone. Asajj watched, mesmerized by the sheer competence of the species the galaxy often dismissed as short-lived. They are so fast, she thought, her heart racing not with fear but with a burgeoning heat. The pirate captain, a massive beast with a cybernetic arm, charged Asher with a roar. The human didn't retreat. He dropped his rifle, sliding under the brute's swing, and drove a combat knife into the power pack of the mechanical limb. The explosion of blue sparks threw them apart, but Asher recovered instantly. He caught the captain's throat in a crushing grip, his muscles straining against the alien's superior mass. You made a mistake, Asher growled, his face inches from the pirate's. You touched my world, he added, before snapping the captain's neck with a sickening crack. With the leadership dead, the remaining pirates fled toward the escape pods. Asher didn't chase them. He had what he came for. He turned back to Asajj, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins, making his movements jerky and primal. He saw her standing there, the red emergency lights reflecting off her chitinous crown, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and desire. The danger had passed, leaving behind a vacuum that needed to be filled with something more than just survival. The ship is ours for the next 10 minutes, Asher said, his voice dropping an octave. Make them count, Asajj whispered, reaching out to unlatch the seals of his chest plate. The metal plates fell to the deck with a heavy thud, echoing in the now silent brig. Asher stepped into her space, his hands finding the curve of her waist, pulling her flush against him. The heat radiating from his body was immense, a byproduct of the combat stims and the raw intensity of his nature. Asajj tilted her head back, offering the sensitive skin of her neck, her breath coming in shallow gasps. I thought I lost the light, Asher admitted, his lips grazing her ear. You are the sun, she replied, her fingers tangling in the short hair at the nape of his neck. He didn't wait for further permission. His mouth found hers in a collision of desperate hunger. It wasn't the gentle kiss of a suitor. It was the claim of a conqueror who had walked through fire to reclaim his prize. Asajj met his passion with an intensity of her own, her hands roaming over the ridges of his back, feeling the scars that told the story of his service. The air in the brig grew thick and humid, the scent of spent plasma and ozone fatting beneath the musk of their shared proximity. Asher, she moaned, the sound vibrating against his chest. He lifted her easily, her legs wrapping around his waist as he backed her against the bulkhead. The cold metal was a sharp contrast to the fire spreading through her limbs. He worked the fastenings of her silken tunic, his eyes never leaving hers, demanding she witness every second of their reunion. When his skin finally met hers, the contact was electric, a bridge between two worlds that the rest of the galaxy said should remain separate. Humans, she gasped, her head falling back as his mouth trailed down to the hollow of her throat. We are persistent, he murmured against her skin. He showed her that persistence then, his movements rhythmic and sure, guided by a deep-seated need to reaffirm their bond. In the heart of a dying pirate ship, surrounded by the wreckage of his enemies, Asher worshipped her with a ferocity that left her breathless. He was her shield, her sword, and now, her lover, proving that the greatest strength of humanity wasn't their weapons, but the lengths they would go to protect the heart of their home. Tell me you're mine, Asher demanded, his voice a low vibration that seemed to command the very air. Forever, Asajj promised, her voice breaking as she reached the peak of her release. As the Vengeance pulled away from the drifting, silent wreck of the corvette, the two of them lay entangled on the floor of the Interceptor's small cabin. The stars streaked past the viewport, distant and indifferent to the small, intense drama that had unfolded. Asher held her close, his chin resting on the top of her head, his breathing finally beginning to steady. What happens now? She asked, tracing a jagged scar on his forearm. Now, Asher said, his eyes turning back to the gray of a calm sea. We go home, and I remind the galaxy why they should never touch what belongs to a veteran, he finished. The story of the Ravager Syndicate's sudden collapse spread through the sector like wildfire. High-ranking officials in the Galactic Council whispered about a ghost that had decimated a fortified vessel in under 20 minutes. They analyzed the sensor logs, seeing the patterns of human engagement, the unpredictability, the leverage of kinetic energy, and the sheer, focused brutality. It served as a reminder that while humans had joined the peace of the stars, the fire that had allowed them to survive their own world had never truly gone out. "They call us a young race," Asher remarked weeks later, standing on the balcony of their home on a quiet colony world. Asajj stepped out to join him, her hand sliding into his. "Let them," she said, looking up at the sky. "It only makes it more surprising when they realize how much we have learned about protecting what we love," she added. He looked at her, the woman he had crossed the void for, and saw not just an alien noble, but his partner. He realized then that the HFY narrative wasn't just about ships and guns. It was about the human heart's refusal to accept defeat when it came to the people who made life worth living. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, his tone shifting back to the easy, domestic warmth they shared. "Only if you're cooking," she teased, leaning into his side. "Persistence, remember," he joked, leading her inside. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and terrors beyond imagining. But for Asher and Asajj, the greatest marvel was the simple, unbreakable thread that bound a retired human soldier to the woman who saw the hero beneath the scars. They knew the peace wouldn't last forever. It never did in a universe this crowded. But they also knew that whenever the shadows moved against them, a certain human veteran would be waiting in the dark, ready to show the stars exactly what humanity was capable of. The legend of their escape became a staple of spacer cantinas, a cautionary tale for those who thought they could prey on the soft edges of human influence. They spoke of the man who broke a ship with his bare hands and the woman who commanded the loyalty of a god of war. It reinforced the unspoken rule of the frontier. If you see a human with a wedding band and a 1,000-yard stare, move to the next system. "Do you think they'll ever learn?" Asajj asked one evening, watching a news report about increased Terran patrols. "Humans?" Asher asked, a smirk playing on his lips. "No, the others," she clarified. Asher pulled her into his lap, his arms a familiar, solid weight around her. "Probably not," he admitted. "But that's okay," he continued, his voice dropping into that sensual, gravelly tone she loved. "It gives me more chances to remind you why I'm the best choice you ever made," he whispered. The kiss that followed was slow and deep, a silent vow renewed in the quiet of their sanctuary. Outside, the stars continued their slow dance, oblivious to the fact that one small corner of the universe was governed by a law older than any empire: the fierce, uncompromising love of a human being. Asajj felt the familiar heat rising in her chest, the way her biology responded to his proximity with a heightened sensitivity that no other species could trigger. She knew that the pirates had thought her a prize, but the real treasure was the man who held her now, the man who would burn the galaxy down just to see her smile. "You're thinking again," Asher noted, his fingers tracing the patterns on her shoulder. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," she replied, turning in his arms to face him. He looked into those nebula-deep eyes and saw a future worth fighting for, a future that didn't involve dreadnoughts or boarding parties, but simply this: the quiet, intense connection between two souls who had found home in each other. "No," Asher corrected, his voice a soft command. "I'm the lucky one," he insisted. And as the lights dimmed in their home, the veteran and the noblewoman disappeared into the private, passionate world they had built, a world that was, in every sense of the word, human. The legacy of Asher's mission lived on not just in stories, but in the tactical manuals of the Federation. They studied the Asher maneuver, the way he had exploited the pirate ship's own structural resonance. But they could never truly replicate it, because you couldn't teach the raw, desperate need that drove a human to protect his mate. That was a biological imperative that transcended training and technology. "It's about the soul," an old instructor once told a class of cadets. "You can give a human a stick, And if he loves what's behind him, he'll kill a god with it, the instructor added. Asajj often thought of those words when she watched Asher working in their garden or reading by the fire. She saw the hands that had dealt death moving with such tenderness, and she understood the true power of his species. They weren't just the best at war, they were the best at caring. Asher, she called out from the doorway. He looked up, a smile breaking through his contemplative expression. Yeah, he asked. I love you, she said, the words simple and profound. He stood up, brushing the dirt from his hands, and walked toward her with that purposeful, predator's grace. I know, he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. And I'll never let anything change that, he promised. The galaxy remained a dangerous place, a tapestry of conflicting interests and ancient grudges. But for one human veteran and his alien bride, the only thing that mattered was the strength of the bond they had forged in the heart of the storm. They were a testament to the fact that when humanity loves, they do so with a force that can reshape the stars themselves. The Ravager Syndicate never troubled that sector again. They had learned the hard way that some prizes come with a price that no amount of credits can cover. They had learned that humans don't just occupy space, they own it, especially when it comes to the people they call their own. Asher and Asajj lived their lives in the beautiful, quiet rhythm of a peace-hard one. They were a living bridge between species, a symbol of what was possible when fear was replaced by understanding, and when strength was used to cherish rather than to crush. Are you happy? Asher asked one night, as they watched the sun set over the horizon. More than I ever thought possible, Asajj replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of her crest, a gesture of profound affection. Good, he whispered. Because I'm just getting started, he added. The twilight faded into a brilliant, star-studded night, a canvas of endless possibilities. And there, in the warmth of their home, the human and the alien stood together, a united front against whatever the universe might throw their way next. They were the ultimate proof of HFY, not through conquest, but through the enduring, passionate power of the human spirit to find, protect, and love its equal among the stars. As the years passed, their story became a myth, then a legend, and finally a part of the cultural bedrock of the frontier. It reminded every traveler that while space is cold and indifferent, the heart of a human is a furnace that can keep the darkness at bay. It told them that if you ever find yourself lost in the void, look for the light of a human hearth, for there you will find a loyalty that knows no bounds. Asher looked at the ring on his finger, the twin to the one Asajj wore, and felt a deep sense of contentment. He had been a soldier, a captain, and a hero, but his favorite title was simply husband. He had found his purpose not in the fires of battle, but in the eyes of the woman who had seen the man behind the machine. Ready for another adventure? He asked her one morning, as they looked at a map of a newly discovered nebula. As long as you're with me, she replied, her eyes sparking with excitement. Always, he promised. And they stepped out into the bright, morning light of their world, ready to face the future together, two hearts beating as one in a galaxy that was finally beginning to understand the true meaning of human excellence. The end of their story was just the beginning of a new era, one where the term humanity was synonymous with unwavering devotion. And in the silence of the deep space, where the stars hummed their ancient songs, the name Asher and Asajj echoed like a promise that no matter how far we wander, we never truly travel alone.